is gone, thrill is gone away. Thrill is gone, baby. Thrill is gone away. You know you done me wrong. You'll be sorry someday. Thrill is gone. Thrill is gone away from me. Thrill is gone, baby. Gone away from me. Although I live on, oh, so much misery.
Hello and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the scenes on the stories that make our community tick. New Haven independent commenters make New Haven tick and explode. Today we're going to read some of their incisive and thought-provoking comments posted to recent breaking news stories in New Haven. Then we're going to comment on what those comments challenge us to figure out about our city. I'm joined in that endeavor here in the WNHH studio by veteran newsman and news junkie Bob McCormick and WNHH's own Sam Hadelman. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Good. Let's get down to business. There's been a lot of talk about whether Carol Burks, the superintendent of schools, is on her way out. The Board of Ed has been secretly negotiating an exit deal. She's kind of holding on. It's all caught up in election year politics. The mayor wanted her gone, and now the mayor might not want to because it would hurt her with her base of African-American voters, whereas the people who want Burks gone are going to be probably voting anyway for her opponent, Justin Elliker. So this week at the Board of Ed, they had another couple hours where people just stood up and said she's terrible or she's great.
Well, from what I saw, Paul, she has a lot of supporters.
Uh-huh.
Carol Burks.
For a few meetings, it was all hours worth of opponents. And then people who support her came out and spoke for her. Can you imagine being Carol Burks and sitting there at every meeting for hours while people say that you're trash or you're great? I mean, that's hard.
Yeah. No, that's
I feel
that's
for the
a rough
woman.
Life. It reminds me of my parent-teacher conferences. Like it's almost the exact
That's
same
right. If
feeling.
you had worldwide video coverage of Sam Hadelman's parent-teacher
Oh my
conferences.
God. Oh my God.
All right, so guys, let's go to the comments. So this week we had a story by Tom Breen about how it looked like she might be gone that night, but nope, she lived another day because some people came out to be for her, some against, and they didn't come to a resolution about her future. So, Bob, let's start with what Blue Girl had to say. These are comments from the New Haven Independent readers.
And most of the people who spoke in support of Dr. Burks did not work for Burks. Not one staff member spoke in support of her. What does that tell you? Most people admitted that they had one conversation with Burks, and that was enough to support her. Really? She has loyalty to nobody, especially not to the children of New Haven. It's funny because Burks will not meet with her own staff. How is that good leadership? There are many teachers, administrators, and staff of color that Burks ran out of the district. So where were you, all of you? These people were taxpayers too. It is clear to all. Burks wants to build her resume on the backs of New Haven, children who will suffer. Many, many students spoke out against Burks' inept leadership. So she was wrong to say they didn't. She needs to resign with dignity, or the Board of Ed needs to fire her for cause without a big payout. There are more qualified and able applicants out there.
So that person feels strongly. It's someone you happen to know, Bob. It's a woman of color who teaches in the system. Now, for a person who's not of color and kind of gets under the, tries to mix it up with people of color, noteworthy. What did he have to say, Sam Hadelman?
I kind of, you know what, one point that's really well made here is that
Let's talk about the comments after we read them.
Oh, yeah.
We're
sorry.
reading the comments.
Yeah,
so what did Noteworthy write? Sam?
Deficits, responsibilities, and kids' first notes. Burks is a poor communicator and the Board of Ed is inept. 2, both are jointly responsible for last year's deficit of $5.8 million, which will be covered by debt and for starting the current fiscal year with a $30 million now reduced somehow to $13 million deficit and still with no plan on the table. 3, how did the deficit go from $30 million to $13 million with no layoffs, no school closures, no transfers? Explain. And 4, if it was Burks, I'd take the buyout of $500,000 or more and run for the hills. You're never going to win, and any future employer will take one look at this mess and ask, how did you survive 15 months?
Whoa. All right.
Oh, there's one more. 5. I thought that was a lot. 5, what's not being done is putting the kids first. That part of Burke's plan actually makes sense. It means that should be at the forefront of every decision mitigated by the budget reality. And finally, 6, the reality is more schools need to be consolidated, more teachers transfers, and larger classrooms need to be a reality. We cannot keep having multi-million-dollar deficit paid for with debt, the infamous taxpayer credit card with no credit limit.
I'm going to go down to Mom 247. Here's what she had to write in this story about the superintendent of schools. I'm not appalled. I am disgusted. Grown people's acting worse than incorrigible teenagers. Why is it the board superintendent committee, no one is looking to cut administrators? One woman stated, quote, cutting admins would save over $2 million. Well, everyone wants to save their jobs and their friends' jobs. Teachers have curriculum that have been developed repeatedly. There are coaches paid for through grants that continue to modify and grow the curriculum. Principals have the training and insight to grow curriculum. The only necessities are supplies, clean, functioning classrooms, and students. Everything else should be up for cutting. Maybe not eliminating, but definitely cutting. Why do we have a top-heavy administration when we can't afford basics? There are 3 assistant superintendents, a deputy superintendent. We have almost as many chiefs as Indians. Dr. Burks has repeatedly defended her position to grow her administrators to grow the system. What kind of a system is it if it does not directly benefit students? A failing one. Each of those peoples makes between $110,000, $140,000. We don't need you as much as we need teachers and supplies. Let the woman do her job. Those positions have annual contracts. Do not renew them. Bring in 2 assistants. One from the teacher's perspective and one from financial background under new 1-year contracts. Those that are currently in position have been brought in for alliance purposes, not for professional accomplishments and abilities. Bob, what did 1644 have to say?
The one hire this district needs is a CFO or someone who can add and explain the numbers. When I look at the budget online, I see a pie chart for expenditures, but none for revenue, without an expected revenue page in the budget. How can one track who needs to be done to match revenue and expenditures?
Sam, can you skip a page and go to the bottom of the next one and read the one by Babs Rawls-Ivy? It's a long one. It goes on to the next page.
Okay. Dr. Burks is a smart, highly regarded educator and administrator. She has a vision not only for educating our students, but also cultivating talent within our administrative roles. All the comments based on feelings and word I can't say on the radio.
Yeah, you can.
Half-assed observations lend nothing to the facts. Dr. Burks is not here to win a popularity contest. She's not here to make others feel good about her style and methods for progress. She is the choice and ought to be supported. The fact that she is a Delta, which means she believes in the power and presence of black women and our ability to lead and uplift black people, I'm sure she is also a member of NAACP and various other academic associations and organizations. Why wouldn't you want someone with wide-ranging associations that only benefit the work she does? I am clear and open about where I stand. I stand with Dr. Burks. I'm not afraid to say so. I'm not afraid in public or private. These are times that hiding behind fake anything serves no one. And if your opinion means if your opinion means that much, or are so provocative as to warrant you losing your job or standing in a community, perhaps you ought not to say some of the ish you so readily spew in spaces that allow you to do so. True whistleblowers have real causes to be concerned. This is not the case here or across other forums. What passes for critical analysis is real, mean-spirited opinions that are small and insinuating at best. I appreciate and welcome well-thought-out opinions that move the conversation forward, allowing for discernment into action. I also appreciate public discourse that allows for the exchange of differing opinions. That's how we learn and grow and move forward. So while I know we live in an age where deliberate stupidity and willful ignorance is considered a presidential leadership trait, I remain hopeful that those that value freedom will not and cannot rest. Again, I stand with Dr. Carol Burks.
Whoa, Babs Rawls-Ivy. She was stating it. Okay, Samuel T. Ross Lee, maybe my favorite, or definitely among my favorite commenters. At Blue Girl, maybe like you, those who work with Dr. Birx don't feel free to speak out publicly using their real name and face. I suspect if they did, you and people like you would excoriate them for supporting her just because she's their boss. Reverend Ross Lee. And Babs Rosario writes in, high five, Reverend Ross Lee. What? There's another teacher here, T. McTague. Bob, what did he have to write?
When I entered the district, Garth Harries was at the helm. Next year will be my 7th teaching for New Haven Public Schools, my whole career. Announcing something negative and then facing the public backlash afterwards didn't work for him, and it's not working now. Ideas can be proposed and discussed with input from different groups. Then a decision is made after a chance for input is offered. The Budget Mitigation Committee needs to meet more often and explore some ideas. 1 or more 2 meetings is not enough to fix the budget, but a year or 2 could yield some beneficial results that don't interrupt kids.
Now you're hearing what New Haven independent commenters have to say about the news on Dateline New Haven and WNHH FM 103.5 and live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So Bob McCormick and Sam Hadelman have been reading these out loud. So now I want to ask you, Sam and Bob, what do you think?
I don't think the
those are strong
city,
opinions, and those are really
city
interesting.
can afford to buy out Carol Birx. With
Right.
all the difficulties.
We're still paying the chief financial officer. We have what's between a $13 and $30 million deficit.
And isn't it a 6-figure deal? They would
It is.
have to pay
It
her?
would be a few $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing they could do is not replace her, but have an assistant superintendent run the district. So you'd be paying the same amount of money.
The reason why I said we can't afford her is there was the issue with the 50-something teachers they were going to lay off, move around, and then they decided not to.
So you would just leave her in place for the next couple of years?
I would say so.
Yeah, how about you,
say
Sam
so.
Hadelman? What's your take on this?
Well, I feel like the one point here is that most of the comments, I haven't seen a lot of people who don't know Dr. Birx personally defending her. A lot of the people in the comment section seem to have a personal and upfront relationship with her. So I don't think it really comes from a perspective of, looking at the school board. It kind of more is a personal thing about Dr. Birx and all the attacks. Because as you said, it's kind of been very vicious. Like, it's been good and awful things said about her. I just don't think that the kids are being thought about. And I think that that's something that is consistent across the board, is that everything except the children's needs and the children's expectations are being considered here.
Yeah, and I don't have an opinion for or against Dr. Birx. I do feel like while there were big questions about how she was chosen, I think she was chosen for some very bad reasons in a very bad way. She has not had a chance to do her job since she came in. She's been sabotaged from day one. And what I thought was most compelling in those comments was Babs Rosavi talking about deltas. She gets attacked for being part of a sorority. I think that is wrong-headed and racist, and I'll tell you why. We love when people are involved in their community, right? We want people running organizations who care about other people and get involved in stuff, who aren't like me on a Sunday just doing my errands and wanting to have a little fun, right? They do stuff on Saturday or Sunday to like help kids or be with other people and build community. And so to be in a sorority or fraternity is a great thing. And if we hired the fraternity she's in, Deltas, and had those people running every job in the city, we would be the best run city in Connecticut. And I'll tell you why it's racist. I was editing comments today. When I didn't run, was about a black woman who's running for Board of Ed. Her name is Amber Moy. She is not in a sorority. She was saying when we hire teachers and we look at what kind of teachers we hire, we need to broaden our definition of qualifications so we get more of color. Like, look at who's in a sorority or fraternity. So a white commenter immediately assumed she's part of the same fraternity as Carol Birx, which they think is a conspiracy. They never think the white groups everybody's on. Like, are you on the Chamber of Commerce? Are you on committees at Yale? And it's good if you're on those things. It's good to be involved. But when black, and especially black women, are involved in organizations that do good, that's used as a strike against us. So this person commented and accused this candidate, Amber Moy, of being another sorority sister because she's a black woman. She's not even in a sorority. That's becoming the show. Aside from the merits, pros and cons of Carol Birx, I think the way this discussion has gone is south. and that we should embrace people who are in sororities, fraternities, civic groups of all kinds, churches, synagogues, mosques, instead of using it as code to keep them out. Now, what do you guys think?
No, you're 100% right. I've heard that criticism across the board, and though I am not a personal fan of Dr. Burks, and I would be in for outing her, I think that criticism of her being at a sorority is completely out of bounds.
Like, I hope she has time to go to the meetings. I'm guessing she's too busy. I'm hoping she's there helping them raise money for kids and stuff. you know?
Well, Paul, from the very beginning, I was at the very first meeting, the school board meeting, where there was controversy over Dr. Burks. Parents, no.
Nobody wanted her to
They
be
didn't
hired.
want her.
Right, there were insiders who wanted to get contracts.
Then there was that issue with Darnell Golson, the board president, and a member,
she could meet with them, yeah.
and Dr. Joyner.
Right,
at that
but so when they
meeting.
hired Carol Burks, they did this public process I didn't think they needed to do. They made it a popularity contest, and we didn't look for who was the best superintendent. We looked for who could win a reality TV show and get everyone to like them at a forum, and she came in last. And they hired her because there were people who wanted to get contracts from the government and be in politically. So they hired her to give those people contracts. Bad reason. But now that she's in, you got to let her do the job. If you got a big deficit.
Well, she's only been on the job for a year and 4 months.
And everything
I read.
she's done, they undercut her. I mean, how could you do your job that way?
Yeah, you can't. You can't. You really can't. When you're in charge.
Yeah. What happened to your mics, Sam?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just been.
You went out again, man. I don't know why. All right, we'll put you on 3. All right. Sam Hadelman on mic 3.
Sorry for that technical difficulty. Yeah.
It's okay.
I-
Wouldn't
I-
be our radio station.
I understand that she hasn't really had the ability to do her job, but the little job that she's done has not been very helpful.
Well, let's give an example. She suggested transferring 53, was it 30?
53.
53 teachers. Now, there's no question that when it was left up to principals, they were retaliating against people they didn't like for being outspoken rather than the right teachers. And you have to look at that kind of stuff. But the basic concept, she has this huge deficit. And as one board member, Matt Wilcox, said, she wasn't laying off anybody. Now, yes, there were problems with how it was done, and you could talk about that. But if you're not going to be able to even transfer people who have vacancies and maybe do it better, I think it was it was used for other reasons. People out to get her used that to seize on it to get her.
I'm going to disagree. I think that if you look into the 50,
Thank God, we need some disagreement.
I mean, if you look at the 53, most of them were veteran teachers with extended contracts. Like, if you were going to do a move like that, you could have moved like the younger teachers who had just been there. But again, most of the teachers
I agree with that, Sam.
Yeah.
And I think some of that was done because, and I know in some cases, there were terrific teachers who some not so terrific principals didn't like as they speak up. And that's obviously nasty. Yeah. But again, so I want to, I don't want that to happen. But she got hit for the concept of transferring people and not having them laid off. And when you have a $30 million or even it's a $13 million deficit, if you can't even do that much, I can see the part where you get mad at a school where someone got transferred who was beloved, doing great work, and it was a vendetta by the principal. But if the superintendent can't do that basic an idea that doesn't cost anybody a job in theory on the basic principle, then you're not letting her do her job.
I just have another comment to add to this mix here, is about her cleaning up the mess of Dr. Mayo. That's the word around town, that she's basically cleaning up that mess of some sort or another, some budget crisis in the school system, and they don't like her for that.
I actually think a lot of grants run out. Like a lot of we scramble for the money we can because we feel underfunded for the needs we have, and that those grants run out. And how you going to keep it going? So a lot it's complicated stuff. Now magnet schools is another mess. So we got lots of money from the state. We rebuilt every school in town for $1.7 billion. A bunch of them were magnet schools, and the state gave us 80 to 95% of the money for each of those schools. And part of the deal was some of them were magnets, which mean people can come from the suburbs too. So they gave us the money up front, but then we had to reserve slots for suburban kids. And now a lot of city kids can't get into these schools. And in some cases, they're actually leaving seats open rather than giving it to a city kid with the hope that a white suburban kid will come in so their numbers look good enough to meet the state's desegregation goals. It's sick. So if you're like black, you live in West Haven, Hamden, you actually have less of a chance under desegregation-inspired law. But anyway, so we had a story.
I thought a lot of these kids were coming in from out of town to New Haven schools.
They are, because when we got the money to build a school, we had to agree to leave slots for suburban kids. So now some people are saying we think that's not a good deal. Then it turns out that those towns still get paid for the student, even if we teach them. So under the state's school formula, Chris Peak had a story Friday that millions of dollars a year go to Hamden, West Haven, East Haven to pay them to educate kids who are actually being sent to our magnet schools and taking the space that we would like to give to city kids. So obviously our readers didn't think that was great. It's a complicated question. You know, you got the money up front, so that's the deal, or you get some other money. But let's see what they had to say with this. Sam, why don't you start with Pentothal? What did Pentothal say about this story?
A couple point here. The poll question of let cities charge tuition is misleading.
Oh, yeah, I should mention that the question was, should we start charging the suburbs for tuition for each kid they send here?
We can charge tuition and just don't for some reason. That gets to my second point. The issue isn't suburban districts getting the money, it's our district not billing them for the service, which the law explicitly allows. With these overpaid administrators, we can't get one off their ass.
Yes, you could say that word.
Okay, bill the suburbs just a clear disregard by the New Haven district of the taxpayer and our children. The third issue is how many New Haven kids go to the suburban districts. The whole upper management and most of our Board of Education folks should be fired. There's no excuse for not recouping millions of dollars. None.
Well, let's see, Bob, what did Samuel T. Ross Lee have to say about this?
This is unconscionable. The suburbs know that they are taking money from an urban school district, which has so many other disadvantages, and the suburbs are okay with that. The fact that this is a glitch in the state's plan is not that point. The fact that suburban schools know that they are getting over on urban schools and disadvantaging us more is. The suburban district's leaders should be ashamed. Unfortunately, there is no evidence that they are.
Signed,
Samuel T. Ross Lee.
he puts his name there twice because he's not hiding behind any fake names.
Yeah.
That is the man. Okay, 1644 writes, 1. Here's going to be the other view now, folks. He's from the suburbs. 1. Given that a Bolton student, that's town of Bolton, was the lead plaintiff in Horton versus Mescal, that's the first education funding lawsuit, it is wrong to say the state's main school funding formula was explicitly designed to redistribute the largesse from country to city. 2. The suburbs are not subsidized to send students to New Haven. They just don't get penalized, just as New Haven doesn't lose money for its students who attend out-of-district schools. 3. New Haven does get extra money from the state for magnet schools, both in capital and extra operating expenses. 4. As the article points out, New Haven could charge tuition. If New Haven isn't, that's New Haven's issue. 5. This problem would not exist if we had a money follows the student model. Students could enroll wherever they were accepted, and the school district would pay a set per pupil fee for tuition, say the non-special ed per pupil charge. That would include religious and independent schools. Suburban districts might be a lot more open to open choice students if they get $15,000 per student enrolled rather than $3,000. Why don't we go ahead, Sam, skip a page. Please go to Wooster Squared.
I love that name, by the way, Worcester Squared. This is the inevitable consequence of overly complex rules and bureaucracies, the classic too clever by half situation. The simple solution is to go back to 100% neighborhood-based schools. This removes the Byzantine shuffling around of money and the potential for abuse and
Obfuscation
that goes with it. You can then cut down on the massive bureaucratic overhead need to run and manage such a system. This has the added benefit of giving parents certainty over where their kids go to school. The magnet system was a nice idea, but it's been routinely gamed and abused by those in power.
Bob, can you skip one page and bring us home with ex-HVN, meeting ex-New Haven person?
This whole article is a load of bull and deflection. 2 years ago, Bridgeport sent tuition bills to the suburbs for students attending interdistrict magnet schools in Bridgeport. No suburb paid, and there are cases pending in court. In fact, Trumbull prepared a bill for Bridgeport students attending interdistrict schools in Trumbull and Bridgeport owes Trumbull more than it is billing. The state and feds provided extra grant money for the interdistrict schools. It is based on a certain percentage of non-city students attending. If the suburbs pull their kids, the city loses funds. It is a shell game. State funding for magnet schools, determined by the school's census on October 1st. If a suburban kid starts a magnet school, doesn't like it, and wants to return to home district, he or she is held until October 2nd, so the magnet school gets funds for the year. The student then returns to the home district, who gets no state support for that child. I taught at an interdistrict magnet high school in Bridgeport. We've suspend discipline problem suburb students in September, grabbed the money on October 1st, and exile them to the home district on October 2nd.
All right, so what do you guys think? So it's a complicated question. Should we charge the suburbs for tuition? Bridgeport tried it, didn't work. We made a deal maybe with the devil, or we're re-examining whether magnet schools work. We built more of them in the state to try to have desegregated schools. Our schools are as segregated as ever. And in a perverse twist on it, we closed the Creed School, formerly Hyde, because they couldn't get enough white suburban kids in. They were turning down black suburban kids, giving them less opportunity because of the weird unintended consequences. What do you guys think about magnet schools? The idea is that it's great to have people from different backgrounds learning together. It makes everyone learn better. It gets a more integrated society, and they also have different themes in them.
I think they should charge the suburbs for each child. It's just my opinion.
And your opinion counts, man. Because you're on Dateline New Haven. Bob McCormick, Sam Hatterman. We're going commenting on the commenters to New Haven Independent News Stories.
But if I can say one last thing about magnet schools in New Haven, my son went to one. He was in Fairhaven for one marking period, and I kept pressing the people who ran the magnet school program. This was back in the 90s. And
what school was it?
He actually ended up going to Betsy Ross Arts Magnet. At the time, it was on Barnes Avenue.
Right, if you switch over to Hill.
But he was a marking period in Fairhaven.
And what'd you think?
I thought it was a good choice. It was good on my part that I did press the magnet school people down at Meadow Street to I want my son in a magnet school.
What do you think, Sam?
I'm not
charge suburbs tuition.
I'm not a huge fan of magnet schools myself, but as the commenter said, if we try to charge tuition to these suburbs, I mean, there's such a low chance that they're even going to pay. So what's the point? So if we're sending these kids from the suburbs to our schools and we're not getting the money for it, why are we putting them there in the first place? You know what I mean? Like, if we can get a kid from New Haven to actually get into these schools.
The problem is that the state gave us money to build these magnet schools. So in return for the money, we said we will hold a certain number of slots for suburban kids. So when we don't have enough, we leave the chair empty rather than get the New Haven kids. So you're right, Sam. People are very upset in New Haven now because they say we want our kids going to school like Bob. But then other people say, but we made this deal.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to the fact that it was a really bad deal. I think most magnet programs don't really work in cities like this. That's just my own personal opinion, is that I haven't really seen infrastructure for magnet schools across the board, because that's kind of the Trump administration's go-to now. And
then you saw with one of the commenters, they want to go a step further. Money follows the child really means they want government money to go to charter schools and private schools and religious schools.
Well, let's say, Paul, I'm going to New Haven school. I don't like it here. I want to go to school in West Haven. Can you do that?
There are limited slots. There's something called
West Haven charge New Haven?
Right. There's something called open choice, and the rules I think differ per district, and there aren't that many slots. So some kids in New Haven do go to Woodbridge, and the irony there was that was supposed to be part of desegregating schools, but then it'd be like white kids in the city would send their kid to a suburban school.
I know a young lady, African American, lived here in New Haven. And her mother sent her to Lyman Hall in Wallingford.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, is that private or public?
No, that's a public.
But then we also know a lot of black parents in West Haven and Hampden feel their cities don't really get race. So they want to send their kids to, let's say, Career. A lot of West Haven kids go to Career or magnet school because they feel like they'll learn better in a place where they don't make black people feel
let
like
me
they're
ask
dumb.
you, Paul, if you had somebody in high school, a child in high school, wouldn't you want them to go to Career? They have some kind of connection with Yale New Haven Hospital.
Yeah, I think that's a great school. I don't blame them. My kids went to Cross, yeah.
You know, the magnet schools really have a great choice. And my son liked to draw, and Betsy Ross was the perfect school for him.
I just think it has to do with distribution of funds, if you think about it. I mean, if we're going to talk about segregation and how things are done, if you look at the suburbs of around New Haven and in the public school system there's just such an influx of money. If you look at the Amity school system per se, the African American rate at Amity has to be less than 5%, and you have such funding going to these schools that the state
right.
the state should be sending money
But
to
I wanted
New
my
Haven.
kid there because the anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
All right.
Right,
So
there
let's
was
try to
just-
squeeze in one more because we're almost out of time. Tweed New Haven Airport. This week, the city won a lawsuit at a federal appeals court. Said your state has a rule that they can't expand their
This is so near and dear to
their
my heart.
runway. And the city business leaders and city leaders say we want to expand the runway so we have more jets in, more commercial traffic that'll support more business and more jobs. The neighborhood says you made a deal with the state last time you extend the runway that you wouldn't try to do it anymore, and it's not going to work anyway. It's going to be more pollution. So this was a big win for the city now that unless it's appealed to the Supreme Court, which I'd be surprised that they would take it, they are going to be able to expand the runway at Tweed, New Haven. People feel passionately. Why don't you start with Wooster Squared? And since Sam likes that name, let him start out. Sam, let's pretend you are Wooster Squared, man.
This would be very good for New Haven and surrounding towns. It's next to impossible to attract medium and large businesses unless you are 20 minutes or closer to an airport. This is long overdue.
All right. Bob, what did Noteworthy have to say, Mr. Grumbly?
The airport authority must be thrilled that with the ink barely dry on the agreement that settled all the lawsuits, it then embarked on a new battlefront to overturn the agreement. How charmed. As for providing hundreds of jobs, that's a joke, but I'll sit back and count them as they roar into broke-ass New Haven.
Which you can't say on the radio.
It will now be my mission to stop all taxpayer funding for Tweed. It can make it or break it on its own. We have not needed to subsidize Tweed in the past, and we really don't need to subsidize it now. If any suburban town wants to kick in, by all means, please do so. The taxpayers who can't afford to fly out of Tweed is tired of paying for your luxury to do so.
Westville Man writes, Yippee! The greater good overrides the vocal minority after years of struggle. I suspect it still might not be over, but we shall see. Now, if we can only get our small-minded Westvillians to allow concerts back at the Ball, I agree with him on that, we can finally draw some larger acts back to New Haven. Alex says huge victory for the city's legal team and strategy. Sam, why don't you go to the next page? Pardee responds to Alex.
Huge victory for the city's legal team and strategy. Ha ha! Hardly. The word from Hartford is that Yale took over the campaign to expand the runways, and the city was happy to let them. Besides, Harp's legal team is too busy using our tax dollars to fight all the lawsuits her administration brought upon the city.
And what does Steve O have to say, Bob?
With all due respect to the politicians and business folks who want to expand Tweed, what have you been smoking? Every past expansion has been accompanied with promises of lots more jobs and a more vibrant airport. The actual result has been only increased corporate welfare and to pretend jobs for some people at the airport. Oh, and more noise? Instead of throwing more money in the Tweed toilet, why don't the Yale/New Haven bigwigs just buy their own corporate jets or timeshare jets, ones that can fly on the existing runway, ones that can be used flexibly as to time and destination, probably would cost a lot less, would look a lot destination, probably would cost a lot less and more prestigious, and the local bigwigs can happily fly themselves and clients to and from Davos or Orlando or D.C. as their needs and means dictate. It would save everyone a lot of money and trouble. As for the idea that a bigger airport will make Yale/New Haven a greater destination, baloney, I'm sorry. Look at Hartford. They have a bigger airport. Does it make Hartford a more vibrant, happening place? A destination city? No, it does not. Get real.
I'm just going to end with 1644. Ideally, we would have a train tunnel from Hutts Point to LaGuardia or JFK, or even decent service to EWR, but we don't. So a small, convenient airport is needed. If this takes off, I can see a lot of smaller conferences at Yale and other venues in New Haven. My wife belongs to an international group that meets biannually, and it would be great to host a conference here one year, but New Haven is just too difficult to get to. So Sam, Bob, this is like religion. This is fiercer than like infidels and other infidels killing each other over who has the right message from the Almighty. Some say Tweed is going to destroy that neighborhood and never do any good for New Haven. Others say New Haven's whole future rests on whether we have a bigger runway at Tweed. What do you guys
This
think?
has been an ongoing battle for
Our whole lives,
umpteen
Bob.
years.
Yeah, 100%.
We also have to remember that, maybe 10 years or less ago, a single-engine plane crashed into a home over there.
Mhm.
And I believe a couple of children were killed.
I remember that. Right this time of year.
And there have been accidents, but there haven't been big planes that have flown into Tweed New Haven Airport. And I heard they already have 3 lined up, one of them being JetBlue, which flies all around the country here. And I know my mother would love to get on a
So what do you
JetBlue at
think?
Tweed and
Should they
fly down to
expand the
Florida.
runway?
I'm going to say no. I don't live too far
tell
from
Mom.
the airport. No, I won't tell my mother. I don't know
Yeah.
if she's watching
If
us
Mom's
right
not
now.
watching, we'll just tell Mom he's for it. But why are you against it?
Noise and danger.
All right.
But I will say that those people who bought homes in that area knew there was an
and
airport.
they're getting money to airport.
and this may happen one day.
All right, what do you think, Sam?
I think they should expand the runway.
And why is that?
Well, just from the perspective of the fact that I have to go to college like every 3-4 times a year, it's just so difficult to like go to Harvard, and the airport's the center of a city that has a booming economy. You know what I mean? It's going to bring in more people. It's going to bring in more traffic, and especially coupled with a big music venue like the Bowl, I think that would make New Haven from a nice B level economic growth to like something like an A level. That makes sense.
So we got Sam, who agrees with the business and city leaders. We got Bob, who agrees with the neighbors. And you got Paul, who's an agnostic. I talked to one group. I said, that's instinct. Talked to the other group. That's kind of instinct.
So are you
Let
in
the debate
between?
reign.
Are you in
Yeah,
between?
you gotta side.
I do believe that New Haven's future is not going to be either the toilet or heaven based on if it's a bigger airport. And I believe the neighborhood has some good arguments against it and some good arguments that they bought knowing what they got. How's that?
That sounds good.
Still-
That's reasonable.
Bob
Still pretty
McCormick.
agnostic.
Bob McCormick, Sam Hadelman, and our great commenters, thank you for making this possible, this episode of Dateline New Haven. Thanks to the miracle man behind the controls and the man behind the trolls on comment threads that have nothing to do with our show. Harry Droz, WNHA station manager. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.